Hello, welcome to another edition of the VOD Weekly News Recap. I am Glorious Haddijatou Njie. Good evening. Now let's look at the headlines. Halifa Sallah appears at the National Assembly for his last session as a parliamentarian. The IEC chairperson suggests a call for the Gambian to transition from marble tokens to paper ballots. Auditors suggest GPA to enter private partnership. Sona Jobate performs on stage with her academy. Algeria, Italy discuss ways to increase in gas supplies. Stranded African students in Ukraine worry over safe return. Libya crisis worsen with rival government preparing to take oath. UN Rights Forum picks ex-ICC prosecutor to lead Ethiopia abuses investigation. Russian troops take control of key city of Kherson, Major. Western Australia, isolated state, reopens 2 years into the pandemic. Abdul Al-Howeiti, Saudi child offender, sentenced to death at retrial. Afghans resort to organs for cash. These are the headlines. Now let's look at the news in details. On Monday, 28 February, Halifa Sallah appeared at the National Assembly for his last session, attended by dozens of lawmakers, cabinet ministers, well-wishers, and members of civil society, where Sallah reminded his colleagues that the battle to free the Gambia from its current state will not be won unless they collectively work to liberate their electorate from poverty and the country's reliance on begging. Unless we free our people from being born in poverty, living in poverty, and dying in poverty, we have not dug the type of well our people deserve, Halifa Sallah said on Monday evening while delivering his farewell address on the floor of the National Assembly as he ended a decade of representing Serekunda constituency. Yesterday was the final sitting of the 5th legislature. Halifa Sallah co-founded DOI in 1986 and was elected as the Secretary General in 1987. He has been a major contributor to Forea, the party's newspaper. He contested elections for the House of Representatives in 1987 and 1992 and was an opposer of the Yahya Jammeh regime. He stood unsuccessfully for the National Assembly in 1997, but was elected in 2002, serving until 2007. During that time, he also served as minority leader. Sallah has also served in the Pan-African Parliament and was the National Alliance for Democracy and Development candidate for president in 2006 presidential election, coming third with 6% of the vote. In an emotional speech, the DOI leader said he came to Parliament to promote a transformative agenda to build the new Gambia on the ethos of self-reliance and self-determination. It is left to each of us to prepare for the type of future we want for ourselves and our people. The problems are still here, and we must not close our eyes to them, Sallah said. Halifa thanked his electorate for the confidence bestowed in him. During the long day session, many lawmakers praised him for his selfless service to the Gambia. His long-term colleague, Sidia Jatta, described him as a magnificent citizen. The IEC chairperson suggests a call for the Gambia to transition from marble tokens to paper ballots. Aissatou Sow reports.
Ali Momar Njie was speaking during a training session organized by the Commission for Civil Society Actors and the Media. The training took place on Wednesday, 2nd March at the GTHI Conference Hall in Carnifing. The chairperson of the IEC has reiterated that the call for urgent reforms in the country's electoral system, revealing that the Commission spent a whopping $2 million per candidate just for ballot drums in the December 4 presidential elections, suggesting that it might incur a similar cost in the upcoming National Assembly elections. Mr. Njie noted that the Commission has to migrate to paper ballots and leave behind the old systems of marbles. Paper ballot, he says, are cheaper and more accurate. Those who have been out of the country can attest to it. The paper will have all the names, symbols, pictures, and details of candidate. All you need to do is stick or thumbprint. It is that simple, he said. With one ballot drum costing around 1,200, conducting elections through using marbles and drums is quite an expensive system, Mr. Njie noted. This is not the first time the Commission is suggesting a move from the current electoral system. They made the same call ahead of the December 4th presidential elections.
The National Audit Office has recommended for the Gambian Ports Authority to enter into a private partnership after the company failed to secure a $1.13 billion port project from DP World, operate and transfer it at an agreed period, which was unsuccessful, resulting in the company approaching the port of Dakar, where they are currently operating and contributing significantly to the transformation of the port of Dakar. Today, the Port of Dakar is ranked as one of the most performing ports in the sub-region, the Auditor General report said. According to the Auditor General's office, the Port of Banjul is one of the few ports in Africa that operates as a public service port without a single aspect of its operation that is privatized or managed by a private sector. Numerous, the Dubai-based port operator DP World has commenced construction of the $1.13 billion deep-water port of Ndayan, Senegal, 50 kilometers from the capital, Dakar, after reportedly not reaching any agreement, the GPA, with investors. Both national and international companies have shown interest in collaborating with GPA, but none of them was successful. A classic example is a proposal of DP World, a company from Dubai, to build port operate and transfer it at an agreed period, which was unsuccessful, resulting in the company approaching the port of Dakar, where they are currently operating and contributing significantly to the transformation of the port of Dakar. Today, the port of Dakar is ranked as one of the most performing ports in the sub-region, the Auditor General reported said. Sona Jobate performs on stage with her academy. Haddijatou Njie reports.
Sona Jobate on Friday, 4th March, had a live performance in the Gambia and featured great performance of her students in the academic. 5 years ago, Sona Jobate sent her long-standing vision into reality by setting up the Gambia Academic, the first institution in the Gambia to educate young Africans in their culture, tradition, history seamlessly alongside their everyday academic education. According to Sona, Africa faced the crucial and urgent challenge of addressing the educational system across the continent. Children who are fortunate enough to be able to attend school spend most of their waking hours in school. However, in most cases, the environment, culture, approach, and curriculum content within these schools are variably oriented around post-colonial value system and subsequently a foreign perspective. She has been studying the Quran since the age of 3, at first taught by her brother. She attended the Royal College of Music, where she studied cello and piano. She also completed a degree at SOAS University of London. By organizing this event, Sona is hoping to achieve raising funds in other academic.
Algeria on Monday discussed with Italian Foreign Minister Luigi Di Maio on the increase in gas supplies to compensate for a possible decline from the Russian side. The menu of the talks were the strengthening of bilateral cooperation, in particular to meet the needs of European energy security in light of the conflict in Ukraine, Di Maio tweeted shortly after his arrival in Algeria. Russia launched an invasion of Ukraine on Thursday, sending shockwaves intentionally and triggering a battery of Western economic sanctions against Moscow. Our goal is to protect Italian companies and families from the effects of this outrageous war, Di Maio told reporters in Algeria, but did not give figures on a possible increase in gas deliveries from Algeria. The Italian government is committed to increasing energy supplies, including gas, from various international partners, including Algeria, and which has always been a reliable supplier, he said. Stranded African students in Ukraine worry over safe returns. Haddijatou reports.
The first group of Ghanaian students evacuated from Ukraine arrived home on Tuesday as African governments stepped up efforts to extract stranded citizens following Russia's invasion. Nigeria plans to start using chartered planes to evacuate hundreds of its citizens on Wednesday from neighboring Poland, Romania, and Hungary, where they have fled the conflict. More than 6,600 people have fled Ukraine, while around 1 million people are internally displaced, the United Nations said on Tuesday. Nigerian government and the African Union on Monday condemned reports that Africa had been mistreated and in some cases denied the right to cross Ukraine borders to safety. Looking cheerful after finally reaching the capital Accra, the Ghanaian students said they wanted to get back together with their families after a difficult journey. Nigerian officials said the 17 students were the first batch of over 500 students expected to be brought home. They arrived on commercial flights paid by the government. I was afraid for my life. That is why I decided to leave some cities where being bombed close to my place, and I spoke to my parents who asked that I should leave. Priscilla Agra, one of the students, told AFP in the capital Accra.
Some of my friends are still there and I'm very worried. I text them to know how they're doing, if they have food or water, because right now the stores are closed.
Yeah,
so
and the attacks are getting worse.
Very, very worse. And hopefully they get out of Ukraine safe and no harm comes upon them.
It has not been easy, but thank God we managed to move out and finally made it to Ghana.
Fatih Bashaga was due to take the oath of office in Tobruk, but the current Tripoli administration of Abdul al-Biba has vowed not to cede power, aimed at growing risks of fighting or a return to territorial division. Bashaga complained late on Wednesday that Biba had cut off Libyan airspace to prevent ministers in the new government from reaching Tobruk. And early on Thursday, his office said 2 ministers were adopted as they tried to travel by land. A spokesman for Biba's government was not immediately available to comment on the alleged adoption of Bashaga's foreign and culture minister by an armed force affiliated with his administration. UN Rights Forum picks ex-ICC prosecutor to lead Ethiopia abuses investigation. Haddijatou reports.
The UN Human Rights Council has picked the former chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court to lead a panel investigating violations of human rights in the conflict in northern Ethiopia, the council said on Wednesday. Ethiopian Federation troops went to war with rebellious forces in November 2020 since the war erupted. Reuters have reported atrocities by all sides, which the parties to the fighting have denied.
On 21st August, the new Sovereign Council was sworn in, composed of 6 civilians and 5 military personnel. Shortly thereafter, a new cabinet was inaugurated, led by Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok. These political changes have already yielded a number of positive developments in relation to the Darfur situation. Foremost amongst these is the Juba Declaration, signed on 11 September by the Sovereign Council and a coalition of armed groups across Sudan, including in Darfur.
The council voted in December to establish an independent investigative commission to look into alleged violations by all sides and to identify proprietors with a view of accountability. Fatou Bensouda, a Gambian national who was chief prosecutor at the ICC between 2012 and 2021, will lead the panel of three, the council said in a statement. The panel will establish the facts and circumstances surrounding the alleged violations and abuses, collect and preserve evidence to identify those responsible, where responsible, the council said.
Russian troops take control of key city of Kherson, Haddijatou Njie reports.
Russian forces have seized control of a key port city in southern Ukraine, the mayor says. Kherson is the first major city to be taken by Russia after heavy fighting since it invaded a week ago. The Russian troops had forced their way into the city council building and imposed a curfew on residents, the mayor said. Several cities have come under intense shelling, with Wednesday being one of the most destructive days of the fighting. An investigation into the possible war crimes and crimes against humanity committed in Ukraine has been launched by the International Criminal Court, ICC. Russia has for the first time admitted taking heavy military casualties during its attack on Ukraine, with 498 troops killed and a further 1,597 injured. Ukraine reports that more than 2,000 civilians have died since the invasion began last Thursday. The conflict has also caused more than 1 million people to flee Ukraine, according to the UN. In a Facebook post, the Kherson city mayor said Russian forces were in control of his city, a port on the Ukraine's southern Black Sea coast with a population of more than 280,000 people. He urged Russian soldiers not to shoot at civilians, saying there were no Ukraine forces in the city. Haddijatou Njie reporting for VOD.
Afghans resorted to organs for cash, Haddijatou reports.
A growing number of Afghans are selling their kidneys as the country descends into economic crisis following the takeover by a Libyan 6 months ago. In a statement near the town of Herat in northern West Afghanistan, so many residents have sold their kidneys, so it has become known as One Kidney Village. Asisa, a 20-year-old mother of three in Shasheba Bazar village, said she has been waiting for a broker to find a buyer for her kidney for some time, and if she is unable to locate one, she might have to sell her 1-year-old daughter. Her husband manages to bring home at most only the equivalent of $1.5 a day from his cut sale in a market. The situation is reminiscent of the political crisis Libya experienced before a unity government was sworn. Starting from 2014, two competing governments vyed for power.
Western Australia has reopened its borders nearly 2 years after first sealing them to international visitors and other Australians because of the coronavirus pandemic. The Australian state is the last to drop its travel entry ban, 4 months after the national's biggest city, Sydney, welcomed back international travel. Western Australia insisted its policy was needed to stop the virus spreading, but critics attacked it for separating families in the same country. The state was dubbed a hermit kingdom for the hardline policy. Its premier Mark McGowan was compared to North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un by the boss of Australian airline Qantas last month. Alan Joyce later apologized for his remarks. Authorities said they expected more than 80,000 arrivals on the first day of the state's reopening. Domestic visitors who are triple vaccinated are allowed to enter the state without quarantining. Arrivals must do a rapid antigen test within 12 hours of arrival and report the case if they test positive. International travelers into Western Australia must be double vaccinated to enter without quarantining. Australia nationally had adopted some of the strictest travel restrictions in the world to manage the onset of COVID. The nation kept its borders shut to international visitors from March 2020 until last month. But internally, there was also fence and bitter dispute between states who did close their borders to others. The two most popular states, New South Wales and Victoria, reports more than 70% of Australia's cases. A Saudi man has been sentenced to death for a second time after being convicted at a retrial of a crime he allegedly committed as a child, his family says. Abdullah Al-Hawaiti was 14 years old when he was arrested in 2017 on charges of murder and armed robbery. The Supreme Court has overturned his original conviction last year. Human rights activists said CCTV footage showed he was not at the scene of the crime and that he was tortured into signing a false confession. Abdullah Al-Hawaiti was first sentenced to death in 2019 after he was convicted by the criminal court in Tabuk province of shooting dead a policeman while robbing a jewelry shop in the town of Dubai. 5 other defendants were handed 15 years prison terms for allegedly aiming and abetting the crimes. All 6 had pleaded not guilty, telling the judge that interrogators coerced their confessions through torture or the threat of it, human rights activists said. The judge also ignored CCTV footage showing that Hawaiti was not near the jewelry at the time of the crime. The Court of Appeal in Tabuk upheld the conviction in January 2021, but the Supreme Court threw it out in November and ordered a retrial. The Tabuk Criminal Court ruled with injustice and sentenced the minor Abdullah with Kusa. Hawaiti's mother, Abdullah, tweeted on Wednesday afternoon, referring to a crime under Sharia or Islamic law, for which the victim or their family is given the right of retribution. After the Supreme Court overthrew the first ruling because of false confession, today it's pronounced an unjust conviction just like last time. Abdullah appealed to King Salman and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to intervene to save her son from the injustice. Reprieved also condemned the verdict, saying it makes a mockery of Saudi Arabia's claim to have eliminated the death penalty for children. The Gulf Kingdom, whose justice system is based on a strict interpretation of Sharia, announced in 2018 that a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison would be applied to juvenile offenders convicted of terrorist crimes, for which punishments are left to the judge's discretion. That's all we have for you today until we come your way again. I am Glorious Haddijatou Njie on the VOD Weekly News Recap. Good evening.